jelly beans and roly-polies even in the bottom of the sink. I was like, where'd you get roly-polies from? He takes me upstairs to the attic. You wouldn't believe the infestation that this house had of roly. Is this good enough?
Yeah. 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 That's really good.
Alright.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay, cool. I'm supposed to look at you.
Oh, yeah, you can look at me. Or you can do whatever. It doesn't matter.
Okay. This story takes place when I was 12 years old. When I was 4 going on 5, my mother moved us to a 1-bedroom apartment in Montrose. And that's where I stayed for close to 10 years, between the ages of 5 to 15. And while I was there from the age of 5 to 10, we had a caretaker that also lived with us in this 1-bedroom apartment. Then eventually my mother got tired of him being around, and we had just got a new neighbor next door. We were in Unit 3, and our new neighbor was in Unit 2, right next to us. His name was Mike Humphrey. He was a wonderful, wonderful man who was a Navy veteran. From the Gulf War, I presume? I was really young, so I didn't really understand war conversation too well. But he would tell me all these great stories about the women that he would hang out with on the Navy ships and such. He was a really great man, and just the type of friend that I needed during that time period, because I had a difficult time making friends and connecting with my peers in my educational setting. And being in a 1-bedroom apartment, there weren't many other children to play around with in the neighborhood and such, so I didn't really have any friends. And then this new neighbor came in, and he had a bunch of free time, and he really enjoyed me and my art. I did a lot of visual art at the time, and he was very supportive of everything I did. And then so my mother, seeing this, decided to kick out my caretaker that had been staying with us for the past 5 years and hire him as my new caretaker, who would take me to and from school. Before I was taking the city metro bus to go to school, and now I actually had a vehicle that could take me to school. While my mother, she worked full time and she didn't have time to take me to school nor pick me up afterward. So that took place during 6th grade and half of 7th grade, where we had a wonderful friendship that was cultivated beautifully, and he stood in as a good father figure while my father was in Clear Lake, living a separate life. And then one morning, his dog was outside, and this is pretty normal. He'd always let out his dog to just go out and mingle about the courtyard before he took me to school. But then his door was open, and so I walked right in, and he was laying down on the floor. And he always laid down on the floor because he had major back problems. So it wasn't abnormal of any kind. I just thought that he overslept. So I told my mother, "Mike's still asleep, Mom." And she said, "Okay, well, I guess I'll take you to school then. And it shouldn't be any problem for him to pick you up." Well, while I'm in school, apparently my mother had called him from her work phone over and over and over, never received an answer of any kind, which was abnormal for him. He was always alert and communicative and in contact by 10 a.m. at least. So my mother got scared and decided to take off work early to come pick me up from school and take me home. So I was picked up and I was really happy. I got taken out of German class. And we came back to the apartment complex. My mother went inside our apartment and mingled, winded down. And then I decided that I would go check on Mike. So I knock on the door and it just gracefully opens on its own. Still wasn't locked. And it was at that point that I looked down and got a better look at Mike on the floor. And it was the most horrific sight I had ever seen up to that point of my life. But I literally saw foam bubbling out from his mouth. I knew that something couldn't be right. So I didn't really scream, but I did shout, "Mother, something's wrong with Mike." And she came over, and she works in the medical field. And she knew right away that he had passed away. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye. The last conversation I had with him was on the phone of the last game of the World Series that was taking place at the time. And so I had to call 911 at the age of 12 and tell them that my neighbor had passed away, and I found them. And there wasn't any time to really let it sink in and accept that my best friend, and in a way my only real true friend at that time period, was gone forever. I didn't know how to accept that. And so I stood on the staircase while the paramedics came in and took his body away. And I knew that I couldn't be in there. I would just be a young child getting in the way of their procedures. But I looked down, and when I looked down, I had this out-of-body moment where my age didn't matter anymore. I felt like something about this experience will stick with me for the rest of my life and shape my ability to react to these types of to death. And so now I have a problem with crying and accepting tears as a form of grief for lost ones. I can't cry for anybody who dies that's close to me. I accepted death to be a part of life at a very young age. And I'd like to learn how to cry over it again. And I miss him a lot. I suppressed the memory a lot until this past year. I began remembering it and realizing that that moment shaped how I thought about a lot of things after that. I miss you, Mike. Thank you.